All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a huge topic, money. And not just what it is, but how our modern banking system, well, how it literally creates it.
You heard that right. Creating money out of thin air. Now, it sounds like some kind of magic trick, doesn't it? But it's a real process, and it's happening at the very heart of our economy. To really get our heads around this, we've got to do a little time traveling. Let's imagine a world with no money at all.
So, picture this, a world without money. Sounds simple, maybe even nice, right? Well, it turns out there was a massive, fundamental problem that made even the simplest trade incredibly difficult.
You see, without money, you're stuck in what's called a barter system. Let's say you're a rice farmer and, you need a new shirt. You can't just walk into a shop. Nope, you have to find someone who makes shirts and who also happens to want your rice. Right now? I mean, can you imagine? The inefficiency is just staggering.
And this core problem, this huge headache of the barter system, actually has a name. It's called the double coincidence of wants. It's that super unlikely situation where two people just happen to have what the other one needs. Think about it. The amount of time you'd waste just searching for that perfect trade, it would grind an entire economy to a halt.
Okay, so to solve this massive problem, humanity came up with an incredible invention, money. And it's basically a technology, a tool that works by doing three very specific and absolutely crucial jobs.
First up, it's a medium of exchange. That's just a fancy way of saying it's the middleman that everyone agrees to accept. No more searching. Second, it's a unit of account. It gives us a common yardstick to measure value. So a pen is worth, say, 10 rupees, not a weird handful of rice. It makes everything comparable. And finally, it's a store of value. You can't really save a pile of bananas for 10 years, right? They'd rot. But you can save money. It holds its value over time, at least in theory.
So, that's what money does. But how do we get from that simple idea to the super complex banking system we have today? Well, the story goes that it all started with a clever idea from a pretty unlikely source.
Let's dive into a little story to see how this all began. So, once upon a time, there was a goldsmith named Lala in a small village. And in this village, everyone used gold for their big transactions.
Now, you can imagine, walking around with a bunch of gold is, well, it's risky. So people started leaving their gold with Lala for safekeeping. He had a strong vault after all. And for every bit of gold they deposited, he'd give them a little paper receipt.
And then something really interesting happened. Over time, instead of the hassle of going to Lala, getting the gold, paying for something, and then having the seller go right back to Lala to deposit it, people just started trading the paper receipts themselves. Why? Because everyone in town trusted that those little pieces of paper were as good as gold. They were the money.
So things are going smoothly. And then one day, someone comes to Lala and asks for a loan. Lala looks at his vault, and it's full of gold, 100 kilograms of it. But here's the thing, that gold isn't really his. It belongs to all the people who deposited it. He's already given out receipts for every single gram. So can he actually lend any of it out?
And this is the light bulb moment. This is the big idea. Lala has a crucial insight. He thinks, wait a minute, everyone is not going to come and ask for their gold back at the exact same time. He realizes it's super unlikely. He just needs to keep a small fraction of the gold on hand for the few people who might show up on any given day. He can safely lend out the rest.
And that right there, that simple idea from our goldsmith Lala, is the absolute core principle of modern banking. Banks today create money based on that exact same insight. So let's break down how it works in the modern world.
Now, today's banks don't just use their own best guess like Lala did. They're regulated. A central bank, like the Reserve Bank of India, sets a very important rule called the Cash Reserve Ratio, or CRR. Basically, it's the percentage of all deposits that a bank is legally required to keep on hand. They can't lend this part out.
Okay, let's use an example to make this super clear. Let's say the CRR is set at 20%. What does that mean? It means for every 100 rupees you deposit in the bank has to hold on to 20 of those rupees. But it's then totally free to lend out the other 80.
All right, let's see how this whole money creation machine gets started. Imagine you walk into a bank and deposit a fresh 100 rupees. At this exact moment, the amount of money in the system is just that, 100 rupees.
Okay, so what does the bank do? Following that 20% rule, it holds on to 20 rupees and puts it in reserve. Then,
It lends out the remaining 80 rupees to someone else. Let's say someone who needs a loan to buy a new bike.
Now, here is the most important part of this whole process. Pay close attention. What happens to that 80 rupees? The person who got the loan buys the bike. The bike shop owner now has 80 rupees. And what do they do with it? They deposit it right back into the banking system. That loan just became a brand new deposit. You see that?
And guess what? The cycle just repeats itself. So now there's a new deposit of 80 rupees. The bank holds 20% of that, which is 16 rupees, and lends out the other 64. And that 64 rupees gets spent and then redeposited, and the process goes on and on and on, with each loan getting a little bit smaller.
So what's the end result? This whole thing is called the money multiplier effect. And believe it or not, that first 100 rupee deposit ends up creating a total of 500 rupees in the economy. That's right, the banking system just created 400 rupees of new money, seemingly out of thin air. It's incredible.
Okay, so if every bank in the country is doing this, creating money every time they make a loan, it raises a really big question, right? Who's in charge here? Who controls this machine to make sure it doesn't just go completely haywire?
Well, that's where the central bank comes in. Think of it as the guardian of the whole system. They have the ultimate control. By changing that cash reserve ratio, they can either hit the brakes or the accelerator on money creation. If they raise the CRR, banks can't lend as much, and the whole process slows down. If they lower it, things speed up. And that's just one of the powerful tools they use to manage the economy.
So there you have it. We've just walked through this incredible system where the simple act of a bank giving out a loan is what actually creates most of the money in our economy.
But this brings us to one last, really important question to leave you with. If lending creates money, what do you think happens when those loans don't get paid back? What happens to the money supply when loans go bad? Something to chew on.